Jake Bennett didn't expect trouble when he moved into Willow Ridge Estates. The homes were neat, the lawns manicured, and the neighbors seemed polite, at least from a distance. After building his e-commerce business from scratch, Jake was finally ready to enjoy the quiet rewards of success. His one indulgence, a genuine Rolex Submariner black dial, stainless steel, sharp enough to catch light with a glance. The drama started at the annual HOA barbecue. Jake wore the Rolex without a second thought. As he sipped a ginger ale by the grill, Karen Monroe, the HOA president, sidled up with her ever-present clipboard and tight smile. "Nice watch," she said, tilting her head. "Must have cost you what, a couple $100 on Canal Street?" Jake chuckled, caught off guard. "It's real." Karen's lips tightened. Her eyes narrowed, almost like she was cataloging every detail. "Sure it is," she said flatly. "I've seen better fakes on Instagram." Before Jake could respond, she turned away, loudly greeting another neighbor with a sugary sweet laugh. Her voice had just enough volume to carry her insult across the crowd. A few heads turned. Jake held his breath and, his tongue, he brushed it off. People like her weren't worth the energy, or so he thought. That week, a letter arrived in his mailbox. The HOA had cited him for refuse containers being visible from the road, specifically by 2 inches. He laughed, adjusted the bins, and moved on. But the next week brought another violation. Mailbox non-compliant with HOA black and brass standards. His mailbox was stainless steel. Nothing new. Nothing anyone had ever complained about before. Then came the kicker. Driveway parking at an unacceptable angle creates visual discord. Jake couldn't believe it. He reviewed the HOA bylaws. Sure enough, Karen had twisted vague guidelines into weapons. He wasn't the type to jump to conclusions, but this was targeted at first. He tried to laugh it off. But when he ran into his neighbor Daniel, an older man with a dusty hat and a love for tomatoes, he asked, "Do they really go this hard on mailbox paint?" Daniel grimaced. "Only when you're on Karen's list." Jake raised an eyebrow. "She's got a list." "Oh, she keeps mental tabs. You embarrassed her or bruised her ego. She'll bury you in HOA garbage until you cave or move." Jake mentioned the Rolex comment. Daniel's eyes lit up with recognition. "Then explains it. She's obsessed with status, thinks she's the neighborhood gatekeeper. If she believes your watch is fake, she'll try to expose you, real or not." Jake shook his head. "Over a watch?" Daniel leaned closer. "She's gone after people for smaller things. Ruined one guy's business, claimed he ran it from his garage just because he parked a branded van outside. Still, Jake refused to play into the drama. Let her believe what she wanted. He knew the Rolex was real. He had the documents, the box, the warranty card all tucked in his home office. Later that week, his girlfriend Lena came over. During dinner, she casually said, "That Karen woman, she approached me at the dog park." Jake's brow furrowed. "What did she say?" "She asked if your Rolex was insured, then said, it'd be tragic if someone was committing fraud in a place like this." "What does that even mean?" Jake pushed his plate aside. This was no longer just snide remarks or violations. This was personal. And Karen, she was digging for something. That night, Jake checked his security system. Cameras, armed doors, locked. Everything looked secure. Still, he couldn't shake the feeling something was off. When he left the Rolex on the kitchen counter the next morning, he never imagined it would be the last time he saw it there. The next morning started like any other. Jake made a protein shake, glanced at his watch on the kitchen counter, and headed for a run. It was a habit. He never wore the Rolex while working out. Too flashy for the gym, too risky for the trail. When he got back 40 minutes later, sweat-drenched and breathing heavy, he reached for a towel and glanced toward the counter. His heart skipped. The Rolex was gone. He blinked twice, wiped his face, and stepped closer. He scanned the space, the sink, the floor, the fruit bowl, empty. Maybe he moved it without thinking. He checked the bedroom dresser, his nightstand, the bathroom sink, nothing. Jake's pulse quickened. He jogged to the front door and replayed the morning in his head. He hadn't opened the door for anyone. His security system was supposed to be on, cameras running. He rushed to his office and pulled up the surveillance app. Buffering. The screen flashed, connection lost at 9:12 a.m. camera offline. A chill crept down his spine. That was only 20 minutes after he left the house. He tapped through footage. Scanning from earlier in the morning, he could see himself heading out, closing the door behind him. Then nothing. All feeds went dark. After 9:12, Jake froze. The cameras had never done that before, not once since installation. They were connected to a cloud system, battery-backed in case of outages. For every feed to drop at the same time, that wasn't normal. He checked the locks. Still secure. No broken windows. Nothing forced. Yet his gut screamed that something had happened while he was out. He called Lena. "You didn't come by the house this morning, did you?" "No." "Why?" "My Rolex is missing, and my cameras shut off while I was gone." Lena's voice dropped. "You don't think?" "Karen." Jake didn't want to say it out loud, but the thought had already taken root. Only one person had shown an unhealthy obsession with the watch, and someone knew exactly when he wasn't home. He pulled up his smart doorbell footage, the only camera that stayed online through a separate system. He rewound the feed. There at 9:18 a.m. Karen Monroe stood at his front porch, clipboard in hand, sunglasses on, her hair pulled back into a severe bun. She appeared to glance around, then stepped toward the garage side entrance. She was gone from the frame a few seconds later. Jake's stomach dropped. That door, the side garage entrance, it was always locked, unless ... He rushed outside. Sure enough, the garage door was just slightly ajar. Barely enough to notice unless you were looking for it. Someone had been inside, and that someone had walked away with a 5-figure timepiece. Jake knew he couldn't go to the police yet, not without solid proof. The doorbell cam showed her on his property, yes, but it didn't show her entering the house or taking anything. And the indoor feeds, blacked out. He sat on the edge of the couch, fury building. Karen had taken this too far. It wasn't just harassment anymore, it was theft. But she was clever. She'd left just enough room for plausible deniability. She always did. Jake realized something else. Karen wasn't trying to steal the watch for money. She was trying to prove a point. To humiliate him. To expose what she thought was a fake by revealing he didn't even own it anymore. And when she finally showed up with it, she found it, she'd demand he explained himself. Unless he beat her to the punch. He sat back, wheels turning fast. If she wanted a game, she was about to get one. And this time, he was playing for keeps. Jake didn't sleep that night. He lay in bed, arms crossed behind his head, the ceiling fan spinning like the thoughts in his mind. The Rolex wasn't just missing, it had been taken. Deliberately, and every breadcrumb led back to one person. Karen Monroe. But she wasn't just a petty gossip. She was methodical, calculated. A predator disguised as a suburban perfectionist. If he was going to fight back, he had to be smarter. And he needed leverage. The next morning, Jake sat at his desk and started his research. He wasn't just looking for gossip, he wanted records. Real dirt. A few clicks brought him to the county clerk's office. Public records were his new best friend. He searched Karen Monroe and narrowed it down to nearby districts. After sifting through court dockets and neighborhood reports, a pattern began to form. There were 3 small claims against her in her previous HOA community, all within the past 5 years. The cases: petty theft, trespassing, abuse of power as an HOA board member. Nothing that had landed her in serious legal trouble, but enough to paint a clear picture. She'd done this before. In one case, Karen allegedly entered a neighbor's backyard under the pretense of enforcing fence compliance, and left with a designer patio umbrella. The homeowner claimed Karen had confiscated it as a violation. She returned it after being threatened with legal action. Jake leaned back in his chair. So that's how she worked. She didn't steal for money, she stole for control, for dominance. Every act was dressed up in a cloak of HOA authority. He jotted down dates, case numbers, anything he could use. Then he dug into the Willow Ridge HOA's bylaws. It was all dry legal language, but one clause made him pause. HOA officials may not enter a homeowner's private property without prior written notice and documented cause. He grinned. Karen had walked into his house. No notice, no written explanation, not even a text, just a security camera blind spot and a Rolex gone. That one clause alone could make her position as HOA president untenable if exposed. Jake closed the documents and stood, staring out the window toward Karen's house. He could feel her watching. That afternoon, he took a walk through the neighborhood with Lena. She kept glancing over her shoulder. She's staring again, Lena whispered. From the bay window? Like a vulture. Good, Jake replied. Let her, because he had a plan. He was going to bait her again. That evening, Jake bought a replica Rolex, online virtually indistinguishable from the real one. He had it overnighted to his doorstep. The next morning, he placed the fake watch on the same kitchen counter where the real one had vanished, just as visible from the window as before. But this time, every single indoor and outdoor camera had a backup system. He even planted a miniature wide-angle lens hidden inside a wall vent, facing the kitchen. Wi-Fi signal encrypted backups sent to cloud storage every 10 seconds. Jake didn't lock the garage door this time. He left it slightly cracked again, just enough for Karen to think she'd found a repeat of his careless mistake. Then, he waited. 3 days passed. Nothing. Jake went about his routine, the dog, watering his plants, hosting a fake call near the fence about how the insurance company tripled the Rolex's value after the theft, all said loud enough for curious ears to hear. Karen didn't bite, but on the 4th morning, Jake woke up to a notification. Motion detected. 6:42 a.m. He tapped the alert. There she was, Karen Monroe. In his kitchen, standing over the fake Rolex, glancing around, lifting it, slipping it into her purse like it was a grocery receipt. Jake's lips curled into a cold smile. Now he had her. Jake stared at the footage on his screen, rewinding it frame by frame. Karen had walked through his cracked garage door like she owned the place. Calm, deliberate. Like this was a routine errand. Her eyes barely scanned the room as she made a beeline for the counter. She didn't hesitate, didn't flinch. He paused the video as she picked up the fake Rolex and slipped it into her purse. There it was, the proof. He now had her caught red-handed in his kitchen, stealing, not assuming, not accusing, not guessing, stealing. And with that footage, she couldn't spin it. Not this time. Jake wasn't just satisfied, he was energized. He backed up the footage across 4 drives: cloud external, private server, and a secure email to himself. He wasn't taking chances. Karen had shown she'd go low. He was going lower, but legally, surgically, and with precision. He didn't go to the police. Not yet. Instead, he invited Lena over and played the video for her. Lena blinked. She didn't even check for cameras. She thought I was stupid or careless. She thinks her HOA badge is a shield. What are you going to do? Jake leaned back, thoughtful. I'm going to make her think she won. The next morning, Jake didn't say a word. He didn't report the break-in, didn't post a video. Instead, he walked his dog like always past Karen's house. She was watering her roses, lips tight, pretending not to look at him. Morning, Jake called out cheerfully. Karen didn't respond, but her smugness was obvious. She thought she'd won, and that's exactly what Jake wanted. He waited 2 more days. Then, on Thursday, Jake printed still frames from the footage, time-stamped shots of Karen in his kitchen, touching the watch, purse open. He placed the images in an envelope and delivered it to his attorney. Don't file anything yet, Jake instructed. Just keep this safe. When I give the word, we go public. But Jake wanted one more play before that. A little theater. That weekend, he hosted a casual backyard parties. Mall, just a few neighbors. Enough to get noticed. He wore a 3rd Rolex this time. Not a fake, but a different genuine model from his small collection. Something flashier, Karen noticed. She hovered by the sidewalk like a mosquito, clipboard in hand. She didn't approach, but Jake saw her eyes narrowing. He waited until the next afternoon to deliver the final blow. Jake uploaded the full footage to a private YouTube, link unlisted but shareable. The title: HOA President Caught Breaking into Home and Stealing Property, Full HD Footage. He sent it anonymously to the entire HOA board. Within an hour, phones were ringing across the neighborhood. Neighbors whispering, board members shocked. Jake sat on his porch, sipping lemonade as 2 HOA officers arrived at Karen's door. She answered with forced composure, but the panic was there in her hands. In the tremble of her voice, Jake watched from his porch. She didn't glance his way, not once. The next morning, he received a formal letter from the HOA board. Karen was placed on indefinite suspension pending investigation, but that wasn't enough. Jake opened his laptop, attached the footage to a criminal complaint, and submitted it to the local police. Karen hadn't just violated HOA rules, she had committed a felony, and soon, everyone would know. By Monday morning, Willow Ridge Estates was a powder keg and Jake had just lit the fuse. The private YouTube video had made its rounds fast, faster than Jake expected. It started with a few board members forwarding it confidentially, but confidentiality doesn't last long in a neighborhood with garden clubs and Facebook groups run like intelligence agencies. By noon, the video was everywhere. Karen Monroe's polished image, the no-nonsense HOA president with crisp glazers and color-coded binders, was shattered. The footage was crystal clear. Karen, entering Jake's home through an unlocked side door, her gaze scanning the counter, her hand reaching for the Rolex, her purse swallowing it whole. All in high definition. Jake hadn't needed to add narration. The silence spoke volumes. The neighborhood group chat exploded. Did anyone else see that video? Is that Karen? I always knew she was shady. Jake sat on his back deck, coffee in hand, watching his inbox flood with emails. Some were apologies, some were support, some were thinly veiled attempts from board members trying to distance themselves from Karen. He received a call from HOA Vice President Mark Dillard around 2 p.m. Jake. This is Mark. I just wanted to say, we're taking this very seriously. This is not the behavior we condone on the board. Jake said nothing. I understand if you're planning legal action. I just hope you'll consider that Karen acted alone. And that Jake ended the call. By the evening, Jake's video had made it to the local news. The segment was short, only 30 seconds, but it featured a blurred shot of Karen's face, and a headline that read, HOA President Accused of Theft, Caught on Camera. Karen's house stayed dark that night. Blinds drawn, no porch light, no evening strolls. The woman who once walked the neighborhood like she owned it had vanished into the walls. The next morning, 2 patrol cars rolled slowly down the street. Karen opened the door in sweats, her face pale and drawn. She didn't protest. She didn't scream. She just stepped outside, arms stiff at her sides. Jake watched from across the street, arms crossed. The officer spoke to her for almost 10 minutes. One handed her a notice. The other looked uncomfortable, glancing toward Jake's house, then back at her. No arrest, not yet. But she was officially under investigation. The HOA called an emergency meeting that night. It was supposed to be private, but word leaked within minutes. Karen had been suspended indefinitely from the board, pending outcome of the police report. Her access to community management tools, revoked authority gone, her influence collapsed overnight. But Jake wasn't done. He submitted a civil claim the same day. Not for the watch he had the fake in hand. Not for emotional distress either. He wanted to make it sting. In the one place Karen guarded the most. Her reputation. The claim read, unauthorized entry into a private residence, theft of personal property, abuse of community authority, defamation of character through repeated public accusations. Jake posted a screenshot of the claim on the same neighborhood thread where the video had gone viral. No comment, no caption, just the document. The comments came pouring in. This is what happens when you play HOA cop. She thought she was untouchable. Guess not. I hope he sues for every dime. For the first time in years, Karen Monroe's rule was broken. The once untouchable enforcer of perfect hedges and compliant driveways now sat inside her house, silenced by the very homeowners she had tried to intimidate. Though Jake wasn't seeking revenge. He was just getting started. Karen Monroe's downfall was public, brutal, and fast, but she wasn't the type to disappear quietly by the end of the week. The neighborhood buzz had started to shift. The initial outrage over the theft began to mix with gossip, half-truths, and questions. Karen, even under fire, had her loyal few longtime friends, HOA loyalists, and residents who feared rocking the boat more than watching it sink. One of them, a wiry man named Glenn Hood, lived on Maple Loop for 20 years, posted in the Willow Ridge Facebook group, "Let's not jump to conclusions. That video doesn't prove anything. Maybe she was inspecting for a gas leak. Maybe she picked up the watch to keep it safe." A few likes, a few weak comments, in agreement. Jake, read it, unimpressed. Karen was trying to muddy the waters. Then came the flyer. It showed up taped to several mailboxes, a printed letter, unofficial-looking HOA stationery. At the top, the words, "A clarification regarding recent allegations." Jake took one down and read, "It has come to our attention that a misleading and malicious video has been circulated within the Willow Ridge community. While the individual depicted is under internal review, we urge residents to reserve judgment until a full investigation is complete. We ask for your patience and understanding during this time." No signature, no direct name, just passive deflection and a clear attempt at narrative control. Jake had to admire her nerve. But the damage was already done. Her face was on the video. Her hand took the watch. Her lies were unraveling. Still, Jake wasn't taking chances. That weekend, he filed a restraining order. The footage, time-stamped evidence, and background from her previous HOA misconduct cases made the process smooth. The court approved the request with little pushback. Karen could no longer come within 100 feet of Jake or his property. And then came the final straw. Jake received a knock at the door early Monday morning. A courier handed him a sealed envelope, legal documents. Karen, somehow, had filed a counterclaim. Defamation? Harassment? Character assassination? Jake nearly laughed. The same woman caught on camera burglarizing his home was accusing him of destroying her name. She was grasping, drowning, throwing wild punches on the way down. But Jake wasn't rattled. He had everything he needed, and he knew she was out of legal options. Still, he kept quiet. No new videos, no Facebook posts, just silence. Let her flail. But behind the scenes, Jake was working on something else, something bigger. A documentary-style breakdown of the entire ordeal. A short exposé was crafting the timeline, compiling every piece of evidence. Security footage, Corin's past HOA violations, even anonymous interviews from two former neighbors in her old community who described eerily similar behavior. He wasn't doing it for clout. He was doing it to protect people like him from people like her. Meanwhile, the neighborhood continued to shift. Several residents had quietly started a petition to recall Karen entirely from the HOA. Word spread that the board was meeting privately to discuss a permanent ban from leadership roles in the community. Some even suggested she sell her house for someone like Karen. Exile from the community she'd once ruled was a worse punishment than jail. But Jake wasn't done. The real Rolex, the one Karen had originally stolen, was still missing, and he had a strong hunch where it might be. Not pawned, not sold, hidden. Karen hadn't done this for money. She did it to humiliate him, to prove a point. And Jake was about to uncover just how far she went. Jake stood in his garage, arms crossed, staring at the side door Karen had used to sneak into his home. It had been weeks since the break-in. The neighborhood had erupted. The HOA was in shambles, and Karen had become a ghost behind her blind spot. The one thing still missing was the real Rolex. He'd played every angle in his mind. Karen hadn't sold it. There was no record of a pawn transaction, and Jake had flagged the serial number at every local dealer. This wasn't about profit. It had never been. She wanted to discredit him, break him down, humiliate him. But people, like Karen, always kept trophies. Jake suspected the watch was close. Too close. So that evening, he went out for a casual walk with Lena. They passed Karen's house. Her lawn was overgrown. The windows were dark. But one thing caught his eye: her garden shed. Small, pale blue, just off center in the backyard. It hadn't been there when he first moved in. Jake had a memory for details. Something about it looked new, out of place, like it had been dropped there suddenly and forgotten. Lena followed his gaze. "You think?" "I'd bet everything," Jake said, voice low. "She wouldn't keep it in the house. Too risky." He waited 3 days. On the 4th, the clouds rolled in. Thunderstorms soaked the neighborhood. Just before dusk, Jake grabbed his umbrella, slipped on gloves, and walked the perimeter. Karen's yard was quiet. No lights. No car in the driveway. He moved through the alley behind her home, barely visible in the heavy rain. He hopped the back fence with practiced ease, quiet, quick. The shed door was locked, but only with a basic padlock. He pulled out the bolt cutters he'd tucked beneath his coat. One click and the lock snapped cleanly. He opened the door. Dust spiderwebs stacked boxes. And there, on a high shelf, wrapped in a wrinkled HOA-issued newsletter, was the black velvet box. Jake lowered it slowly. The Rolex case. He opened it. The real one. His Rolex. Everything scratches. Wait, the engraved serial number was exactly as he remembered. She hadn't damaged it. She had just hidden it, like a schoolyard bully hoarding something she could flaunt later. He didn't stay long. He slipped the box into his coat and sealed the shed again. On the way back home, his heart pounded not from fear, but adrenaline. Vindication was just a few steps away. The next morning, he walked to the HOA office during open hours. He asked to speak to 2 board members privately. There, in the small conference room, he placed the Rolex box on the table and told them everything. The video of Karen stealing the decoy watch, the restraining order, the flyer she distributed to manipulate the community, and now the real Rolex found hidden on her property. The board members sat in silence for a full minute. One of them, a woman named Susan, finally exhaled. Jake, this is the last nail. Within hours, the board voted to remove Karen permanently from the HO, and not just suspend her, but revoke her membership entirely. She would lose voting rights, committee access, and any say in neighborhood policies. She was effectively cut off from the very world she once controlled. Jake could have stopped there, but he didn't. That evening, he uploaded a final video, not a takedown, not revenge, just the truth. A calm, step-by-step breakdown of what happened, what it cost him, and what it revealed about how power can twist someone into believing they're above consequences. No anger, no gloating, just closure. But the next day, Karen did something no one expected. She knocked on Jake's door. Jake didn't answer the door immediately. He stood a few feet back, watching Karen Monroe's silhouette through the frosted glass. She wasn't holding a clipboard, no purse, no papers, just standing, head down, arms crossed, like someone waiting for a verdict. He opened the door slowly. Karen didn't meet his eyes. "Can we talk?" Jake hesitated, then stepped onto the porch. Closing the door behind him, he didn't need her in his house, not again. Karen looked like she hadn't slept in days. Her once perfect hair was limp. The crisp suits were gone, replaced by a plain sweatshirt and jeans. She looked smaller somehow, deflated. "I know I can't fix this," she said quietly, "but I want to explain." Jake raised an eyebrow. "Explain." "Stealing from me, lying, smearing my name with flyers." "I wasn't trying to destroy you," she said, her voice low. "I was trying to control the story. I thought if I exposed you, made people question you, maybe I could save face. I didn't think it would go this far." Jake's jaw clenched. "You broke into my house, I know." Her voice cracked. I lost control. Somewhere along the way, this role being in charge, managing everything started to define me. When I thought you were mocking that with your watch, your attitude, I snapped. It sounds ridiculous, I know. But it made me feel powerless. And I hated that." Jake let the silence stretch. "Now," she continued, "I've lost my position, my reputation, probably half my neighbors, and I know the charges are real. I'll accept whatever comes. But I wanted you to hear it from Manat, a judge, not the news." He studied her face. There was no defiance left, just fatigue, regret, and shame. Jake finally spoke. "You know, I didn't even care what you thought about the Rolex, but when you came into my home, that changed everything. That wasn't about status. That was about control, and you wanted to humiliate me." Karen nodded. "You're right." He crossed his arms. "So why now?" "I saw your video. The way you ended it. You could have humiliated me, but you didn't. That hit harder than anything else." Jake stared at her for a long moment, then turned to the side. "You should go." Karen didn't argue. She gave a slow nod, stepped down the porch, stairs, and walked away without a word. No plea, no defense, just silence. Jake watched her go until she disappeared around the corner. Then, he closed the door. He didn't feel victorious. He felt clear. Later that week, the neighborhood was quiet. The board voted in a new presidents on one.com, fair, and actually neighborly. The excessive HOA rules Karen had enforced so brutally were rewritten. The nonsense citations stopped. Jake's story had been shared thousands of times online. People across the country reached out, sharing their own HOA horror stories. Some even asked for advice. Others just wanted to thank him for standing up. Never revealed Karen's full name. Never posted her arrest or court appearance. He let the truth live where it needed to, enough to make change, but not enough to destroy someone beyond repair. As for the Rolex, it sat in a display box on his desk, not on his wrist, not in public view. Just there. A reminder of how something so small had unraveled something so twisted. One evening, Lena leaned over and asked, "Do you regret any of it?" Jake thought for a long moment, then shook his head. No, because if I hadn't fought back, she'd still be running this place like a queen. And sometimes you have to remind them the crown isn't real. And with that, the war was over. Jake didn't win with noise, he won with silence. Strategy and a Rolex no one would ever mistake for fake again. The end.